Hey guys, welcome back to the Optimize to Scale podcast. And on today's episode, I'm going to be talking to our go-to LinkedIn guy, Jose. And he's going to be helping us set up, optimize, and get hired on LinkedIn. There are many places you can get hired to work remotely, and LinkedIn is one of those. But in order to have the best results, you want to set it up in the best possible way. So let's get started talking to Jose, all things LinkedIn. Hey friend, I know you're here for one reason. You're ready to optimize your tools, time, and talents to create a money-making opportunity from home. Now, if that's you, then you're in the right place. I'm Jacqueline, your host, and I started my own virtual assistant business while homeschooling my 4 children. I know it sounds crazy, but it doesn't have to make you crazy. I'm here to teach you my secrets and strategies so that you can start your own freelance or virtual assistant business. So let's get ready to optimize to scale. All right, Jose, I am so glad that you came on the show today to talk to us about LinkedIn and resume writing. So welcome to Optimize to Scale.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
First, if you want to just share with us how you got into working with people on their resume and how you got into LinkedIn and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so my journey, which is pretty unique, I would say, is where I had originally started working out of high school. So I had a full-time job when I was in high school, and I really didn't see college in my future at any given point. And I didn't see myself going to college right after high school either. I had to support myself, so I didn't have all the things that most people or some people have to really say, I'm going to college. And I worked in the corporate world. I worked in sales and telecommunications. And back then, in the late 90s, early 2000s, cell phones were all the rave. So I had the ability to make a lot of money. So I was 18 years old, living in New York City, making 6 figures. And after trying to grow in work, I kept getting told that, like, well, you don't have a degree. And I kept getting shut down for every job that I was trying to get myself to. So long story short, after having like 3 or 4 jobs that I got shut down for and trying to grow myself within the same company, I decided to take the chance and say, okay, I'm going to start going to college, but I'm really not quite sure what I'm going to college for. And so this happens to college students. This happens to everybody. So I decided to go get a business degree, which I thought made the most sense. But like many people who aren't sure what they want to do, they go part-time and they maybe have a full-time job, because that happened. And it took me 7 years to get an associate's degree. So it was quite the interesting ride, because a couple of jobs in between and a couple of schools in between, back then going to school during nights. And then we got introduced to the online world of online teaching, and that's not for everybody. And so that became the thing back in the early 2000s. And so by 2008, I finally finished my associate's degree in business administration with a focus in accounting. Hate accounting, but really good with it. And so I was like, what do I do next? And I did a poll with all of my friends, and a lot of them were like, you seem to be really good at teaching, because you talk about how you always help people with different things, whether it's in their life, whether it's in their career. Why don't you go to school to be a teacher? I'm like, well, what kind of teacher should I be? And they said Spanish. I never thought of myself as teaching Spanish. And it was the most bizarre thing, because yes, I'm Hispanic and I'm fluent teaching Spanish, but I'm like, why do I want to teach Spanish? So I'm like halfway through my student teaching, where we have to do all these field experiences for our classes. And I start to realize every single classroom I go in, the teachers are like exhausted, they're overwhelmed, they don't feel a connection to really the students, and they're really teaching for a test. And So went back to my friends and said, how many of you remember Spanish when you were in high school or middle school? And they're just, we remember the curse words. So
That's
to
funny.
me, I could not find the reward in continuing to pursue a profession that really wasn't rewarding for not just me, but the person who I was helping.
Sure.
So to make this story shorter, I ended up going to my career counseling office, career services at SUNY Oneonta, which is where I got my undergrad at. And I said, I'm dropping my education degree. I'm just getting a bachelor's in Spanish and I don't want to teach, but I don't really know what I should do. I still want to teach. I just don't want to be a Spanish teacher.
Okay.
And the counselor said to me, like, well, I have a class that I teach that you can facilitate as the teacher assistant that's focused in career development. So you're working with students and helping them build their resume, helping them clarify their values, their skills, and their understanding, and really helping them determine if their major they're in is a good fit for them, and if they're choosing the right major based on their skills, their values, and then how to find a job or a career based on their skills and values. Something that I was immediately interested in because I like to know what makes people tick. And it's just my psyche. Mm-hmm. And I did the class, fell immediately in love with it. And I said to him, like, well, how can I do this all the time? How can I do what you do? So flash forward, my first job out of my undergrad while going to grad school was in a career services office. I got a job at a state school doing all these things. So I taught students the same thing, where it was teaching them how to understand field of careers. I taught them how to build resumes. I taught them all the LinkedIn stuff. LinkedIn back then was really new. LinkedIn exploded. I think LinkedIn came out like in 2008 or 2009, 2010, but it really exploded like in 2011, 2012.
Right.
And at the time, social media was becoming a really big thing in colleges to really connect with students because students were on Facebook. Facebook had just turned like 6 or 7 years. And so then you bring LinkedIn, which is the professional Facebook.
Right.
And so how do you prep students for success? So kind of bringing this full circle, how do you prep students for success? And we know that if LinkedIn is this platform that's ultimately teaching, well, not so much teaching, but helping people connect with each other for the purpose of their career, for the purpose of building a business, for the purpose of finding a job, then we need to, as professionals in the college environment, really help students understand how to build a great professional online presence, because your digital presence matters just as much. Right. Back in the day, it was also differentiating, if you're on social media, can an employer find you and what are they going to see? Are you running around playing beer pong with your friends while you're in college?
Right.
Are you running around jumping on the bar and someone's videotaping you with your shirt off? And these are all the things that an employer might consider to be unprofessional or a flight risk. So there was always finding that balance of teaching students how to be professional and how to be that best professional person in the workplace, but also being mindful of how do you hide the things that you don't want someone to know you did when you were crazy and wild in college.
Right. So let me ask you this. What would you say, like if you had to do a quick comparison of Facebook versus LinkedIn, if someone is like, well, I want to create a LinkedIn profile and begin that, and maybe they're a little bit younger or newer to the workforce, what are some things that are similar that you can do on both and some things you may want to avoid so that you don't hinder a job opportunity?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I would say that, your Facebook is your Facebook, and a lot of younger students have leaned away from Facebook mostly because their parents are on Facebook, and so they don't want to be where their parents are. Right. And so I would say though, like you can keep your profile clean. You have the ability to allow what people see. I would say though, you want to show your authentic you. People want to hire someone who can connect with others, who are really good with time management, who are good with technology, who are able to communicate effectively. Those are really important skills that you can show on both platforms. And obviously one is a professional, one is more of a social one. So don't hide the parts of you where you're out having a good time and you want to take a group photo with your friends. You have a group of people, you've participated in this really good event and you want to take a picture. You can post an article with a description of what the event was and showcase how much time, a good time you were. So you're self-promoting your professional development, you're promoting the event that you went to, and you're showing your collaboration with others.
Okay, I get that. Okay. And so that would be where you can show your personality, but you're also showing that you're doing some development. That's great. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, we'll pause on the students for a second. Let's talk about the mom who maybe has worked from home her whole life, her whole, adult time, and now she wants to enter the work field. How should she begin approaching her LinkedIn profile?
So, and that's a great question because a lot of people struggle with being able to connect. They have like this ability of imposter syndrome, like because they worked from home for so many years and haven't been in the workforce, they struggle to understand how they can re-enter it. And what I usually tell people is that first you have to change the mindset of how you're feeling about it so that you can then recognize your worth and your value and what you bring to the table. Because just because you didn't work in the last 15 years because you were raising babies doesn't mean that you can't go back into the workforce. Employers today are so much more, I don't want to say forgiving, but like understanding that everyone has a different lifestyle and people have choices. And the same thing could happen to a dad who decides that his wife wants to be the person going, the breadwinner going to work, and the dad stays at home, and they kind of reverse roles. And so our family dynamics are different, and employers who value family values will recognize that. If you're a person who's struggling with that and someone questions you, you don't want to work for them because they don't value you. So you have to change that mindset a little bit about how you feel and think of how you're going to go back in and just allow yourself to be present. This is who you are. What I'll say about the skills is that being at home and managing a family and managing a household presents a lot of different skills that are useful to the workplace. You talk about creating teams, you talk about creating schedules, you talk about time management, you talk about collaborating. It takes a team, right? It takes a village. You talk about all the things that are useful to the work environment. Now you have to be honest with yourself on what is the job that you're applying to and what does your background bring into that actual job. So you have to really look at the job description and say, okay, even though I haven't done this for a while, can I actually really do what this job is asking me to do?
Yeah, and it sounds like it's almost finding the synonym for what you've done instead of driving the soccer van or whatever. You had to coordinate schedules.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, when you're like, you think about all how PTOs now, as opposed to parent teacher association, now it's parent teacher organization.
Yeah.
But you think about the logistics of running an event for your student's school, if you're that active in that. You think about all the sports activities. You think about connecting with your neighborhood, connecting with your church, connecting with your community. You have to literally like get a notepad and make that list of all the things you've done in the last 20 or 15 or 10 years that you've spent being at home, and then put into use to say, okay, what have I done in this particular scenario and this particular event that I think is transferable as an experience or skill to this job? And how am I going to add value to that? How am I going to paint the picture so the person on the other side reading this can say, oh, that's totally transferable? Because I know it happens. I know people are very discriminatory in the workplace when it comes to recruiting. I know people get overlooked, but you have to be able to make yourself stand out. You got to give it sex appeal. You have to make it look good, right?
Right.
And there's really unique ways of doing that. There's all the keywords. You want to use the keywords that the job application, the job description has to make it stand out. All those SEO searchable terms.
Yes, that's really good. That's really good. And you mentioned earlier in your story, for example, that you didn't think you wanted to do college. You said college wasn't for you. So for the student who's like, okay, I'm about to graduate. I don't want to go to college, or at least I don't think I want to go, but I do. They don't want to. They don't want to do those really low level entry jobs, or maybe you get a few hours this week, or they want to find something full time to throw themselves into. What are the transferable skills from high school to that?
You have to find out. A lot of high schools today have a specific focus in teaching students skills that are useful in the world of work in case a student decides not to. And so I'll go to college.
Go to college.
And so you have to look at what have you done. But I always say, look at what you can do while you're in high school in work related. So maybe it's an internship. Maybe it's working at a fast food restaurant. You want to develop core skills that ultimately anybody can see and take and say, okay, this person can do this.
Okay.
So, for example, if you're in high school and you've never worked, right? You've never worked, but you don't want to go to college right away. You really just want to get your feet wet. You want to get a job and you're trying to figure it out.
And maybe you've worked like lawn mowing or babysitting, things like that.
Yeah. And those are like the side gigs, those side jobs, right? So like people don't think of that as work, but that's work, right? Because you were entrepreneurial enough to go ask your neighbor, hey, will you pay me $5 if I mow your lawn?
Yeah.
Or you go to your next door neighbor and say, like, I'm starting my babysitting business. I'm available such and such time. Let me know if you want me to watch your kids. That's entrepreneurship. Okay. That's setting the groundwork for allowing yourself to say, I want to have success for myself, and I'm willing to do whatever skill that I've developed and know that I have the confidence and ability to do it. Okay. People want to see that you have people skills. Ultimately, in any work you do, you're providing a service. And if you're able to communicate and hold a conversation and have etiquette, whether it's say, hi, how are you today? Or thank you so much, or please, all those basic manners we teach our kids and we teach ourselves, those were basic foundations of customer service. And I know the retail world looks very different today. Worked for 2 companies that are no longer in service right now, right? It's important to explore all the things you can do because exploration is the biggest thing. You want to explore what you might want to do.
Right.
And there's people who are successful that don't ever go to college and do really well. So you have to believe in yourself. You have to learn what you like and what you don't like, what you're willing to commit to get those skills, and have mentorship. I think is super important. Establishing and finding someone who you can connect with and you feel like has your best interest in mind and the best interest at bay is always super valuable in your life at any given time.
Yeah, I agree with that because especially with things changing so fast, if you're focusing on learning a skill, you can't also necessarily keep up with the platform like LinkedIn or even the next natural progression with LinkedIn when you start applying for jobs is they ask for a resume, right? And it's just like, that's a whole nother thing you have to learn. So it's so helpful to have a mentor that can help with that. And so I have a maybe an easier question, but what's a myth about LinkedIn that people believe that you think needs to be debunked?
So I don't know if it's a myth. I think people are intimidated by the platform. I say LinkedIn is your resume that never sleeps, because if you're trying to, let's say, find a job and you know your industry, you know your target, you know your audience really that you're trying to put yourself out there, then you can build your profile and build a presence that can really engage you to be sought out by recruiters. Really, really helpful to allow the hiring manager or the recruiter, if they read it, to see how someone communicates. Can they write really well? Mm-hmm. Are they able to articulate what they've done? So your resume shows everything you've done, but the cover letter tells a story. And so the cover letter is 4 paragraphs, right? Right. Your why are you applying to this job? Where did you find this job? What is the job? And why are you applying to it? So there's the who, the what, the where, and the why. That's the first paragraph. You can answer that in literally 3 lines.
Yeah.
The second paragraph is how are you qualified for this position? So when you look at the job description has a section called qualifications or required qualifications.
Yeah.
And so when you go through that list or that summary that it gives you, you can highlight the things that you're qualified in, but you want to give an example of how you're qualified and how would you do that task or
Mm-hmm.
perform that duty for that job.
Okay.
The third paragraph is the experience. And sometimes it can be 2 paragraphs depending on how descriptive the job description is.
Right.
But the experience section, which is responsibilities, is everything you've done that job is asking you to do. And a lot of times what most people want to see is the problem, what action did you take to solve it, and how long did it take you? So it's the action plus the problem plus the action and the result.
Right.
And so you want to use the same formula that you would use in your resume, in your cover letter, so that you're showcasing that. And after that, it's just the closing. And the closing is a call to action. I think LinkedIn's changed a lot from what it used to be to what it is today. It's a little bit more forgiving. Ultimately, because people were intimidated, and I think people are still intimidated by LinkedIn way back when, because they thought it was just this place where professionals went to.
Mm-hmm.
But in honesty, it's so much more relaxed, where it's become more social and less professional. They did some changes to really engage that person who wasn't just a professional, who wasn't a C-suite, Fortune 500 person, who wasn't the, average, director or the CFO. They wanted to make it so it was more down to earth, the average person, to be able to connect. At the same time, they started to incorporate education. So you then add, remember how I mentioned where high school students were starting to use LinkedIn? LinkedIn was trying to engage. So when Microsoft purchased LinkedIn, they started to change the platform. So they created educational tools and resources for people who may not have a college degree, for people who may not have a background in creating a professional presence online, for people who are really just wanting to learn all the things of being able to market themselves. So they created lynda.com, and they merged together. So LinkedIn bought it before Microsoft kind of purchased LinkedIn, but it was really a platform that was to make it so that all these people who are on Facebook can be on LinkedIn too.
Okay.
So
yeah. And that's still lynda.com is something that's still available?
Lynda.com, yes.
Oh, cool.
You can go in there. I don't know if right now, I don't know if what parts of it are free and what parts of it are paid.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was a recruiter, I know that we used it in cases to help certain individuals who needed to elevate their skill level for their job. So I would work with the supervisors in HR. I would work with supervisors to help their employees professionally develop themselves and develop their skill set. So we would use lynda.com as that resource. So large companies would purchase it as a product and service for skill development. Mm-hmm. And then people who were on LinkedIn used to be able to utilize it to develop their, own professional development. So there's a lot of skills and learning activities on it.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things that I'm kind of gathering from everything that you're saying that I really love, and I think it's encouraging in a lot of ways, because with the cost of college going up, I mean, it's high, right? And to send an 18-year-old to college and they don't know what they want, or they don't want to be there, just doesn't seem to make sense. But what I'm hearing is that they can begin to be contributing members of society, and they can grow, start making income simply, by believing in themselves and getting on LinkedIn. They can put the different skills that they have that they've developed in high school through internships, side jobs, and, they can start building a presence, get found by recruiters. But what I also love is that you don't have to do it alone, right? Get a mentor, get a career coach. And something else that you said that I thought was really helpful was that you asked your friends, like, what do you see me doing? Like, people who know you and who have your best interest in mind. Because I don't think anybody that does anything great didn't do it alone, right? Oh. You've still got to be the one putting in the hard work that you have to do. But it sounds like with a combination of a mentor, a coach, people who see something in you, your hard work and that belief, I'm not saying college is not necessary, but it may not be the only way.
It's
And so
definitely not the
that's
only way. And
right,
and I think it has to be at the right time, and it's not for everybody. I
right,
mean, you think about the job. So right now, with the economy and so many people were told, go to college, go to college, go to college. There's jobs out there that are really well-paying jobs. You have plumbers, you have welders, people in the construction field. There's a new resurgence in like the manufacturing world where these are six-figure jobs in some places that people don't realize that maybe their skill set isn't in a job that's a college degree job.
right.
And that takes time to figure out. You have to really ask yourself some hard question. What
Mm-hmm.
are you willing to do? What skills are you willing to learn? So like if you want to become you want to work in construction, you want to be like an engineer, then that requires at least an associate's degree.
Right.
But maybe you go work part-time as a foreman or as an apprentice before you invest in the time and the energy to get that degree.
Yeah.
It happens differently for everybody.
Yeah.
We put a lot of stress and pressure on students and kids today to make the decision for them that they're going to college.
Mm.
And the last thing you want is an angry freshman or a first year student who's like, well, I'm here because my parents told me to come here. I
Right.
see it all the time. I see it every day. They're bitter.
Yeah.
Because they're like, I don't think college is for me. I'm like, well, what do you want to do? Why do you say that? What exactly makes you feel that way? And through deep digging and conversation and doing kind of like that interest inventory, they start to realize that maybe it is in the right direction, or then they have to write a really hard letter to their parents to say like, look, I think I'm going to do this for a year and I'm going to then go back and start working, or I really want to work and go to college part-time. Find that balance.
Yeah.
I would also say too that for the student that's completely unsure of what they want to do and where they want to go and what they want to be, it's worth going to a community college first.
Yeah.
Spending 2 years at your local community college, getting to know more about yourself and exploring more about yourself. Knock out prerequisites that your state school or your institution requires before launching yourself into a four-year school.
Yeah.
Education's expensive. It's not getting any cheaper. I think about ways that I would have done it differently, but ultimately I chose the education path for myself. I didn't have the responsibilities like my brother has a kid, he has a house. I didn't have those responsibilities. I went and invested in my education. So, yep, I have $200,000 in student loan debt, but I work in higher education. I have public service. I have student loan forgiveness that I'm eligible for. So there's things that you have to recognize what you're investing in.
Yeah. And another part of your story that I thought was really important to draw out is that you kept going. So as something didn't fit, you pivoted, but you kept going. And in the going, you discovered another thing and another thing. And then you ended up where you are, like your brother too. He just kept going. And then now he's doing this amazing thing with the national, beverage brands, right?
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of times we get stuck, like, I haven't worked in the workforce. And so we sit, it's like, well, no, just figure out a way to name your skills in a way that is something a company needs, put it on there and just go. And whatever you can get, work your way up or pivot, but keep going. So I love, thank you for sharing that story. And I want to ask you a few quick questions before we wrap up.
Sure.
So one thing, and these are more just about you,
Okay.
a little lighthearted. Well, the first one might be a little deep, but if there is a one book that you would recommend everybody read, what would that one book be?
I would say Marie Forleo's Everything is Figureoutable.
And why is that?
So, for me, at my darkest point, I was working in HR, and I was working for someone who was a bigot, was racist, and just brought me down and made me doubt myself and made me feel like, I was failing at everything. And I felt so stuck because I was pigeonholed where I'm working this job that I put my heart and soul into, and I knew I was doing really, really well, but I couldn't get my boss to see that and just not having that respect. It wasn't Marie's book, essentially, because her book came out later.
Yeah.
But it was her messaging, and it was her, what she says as a coach and as a person, as a woman. And I just really connected with her. When you want something hard enough, you will look for a way to find it. And to me, at my core, when I think about everything that I've had to, overcome in my life and everything that I've helped people do, they experience, their experiences are different in how they got to it, but I've helped them in that journey. I believe everything is forgettable. And, she has a formula that she takes you through. But I think in conversation, if you are that person that likes to help people and likes to help people go through a journey, and that person's willing to invest in themselves, then you can take them on that journey. Yeah. And that book is a journey. It really is. That one's the first one that comes to mind when we talk about the conversation we're having.
Yeah. Okay. And so the next one is, if you could have any job in the world, it can't be the one you have now, and you could do anything else. Money's not a factor. You have everything you need and want and desire. What job would you have? What would you be doing?
That's such an interesting question. Hard to answer on the spot, but I remember growing up in New York City and living in New York, and Manhattan was my playground. So I always thought I would become like this hot shot, vice president at this big corporation doing marketing and advertising.
Yeah.
I always saw myself having really big ideas and out of the box visions and all these bright, big graphics. And to me, that was exciting. And I would see, as a kid growing up, you walk into Times Square, you see all this stuff, it lights you up, right? Yeah. And I'm like, I wanted to be that person that created that stuff. But I find that, our dreams are not ones that we ultimately always think that are things we should be doing. Sometimes they're part of who we are, and we do small pieces of them in our life.
And the last one, super easy. What is your favorite platform that you love to hang out on all the time?
I live in Instagram.
Okay.
I know some people don't. I'm a millennial, and I it's not that. And I don't want to say this because I've worked with people from all different groups. Obviously, in my job as a professional in career services at higher education, I've worked from the person who is retiring from the military, becoming a civilian again, and has 40 years in the military and has no idea how to enter the workforce again. Or with the mom who's like, I graduated college 20 years ago. I had my kids and I stayed at home. How do I get back to work? Right. And now it's the whole so for me, I don't like to pigeonhole myself, which is one of the things that we struggle as, entrepreneurs and who our clients really look like.
Yeah.
But, the platform for Instagram, I'm attracted to the visual parts of it. Yes. A picture tells a story. Yeah. And sometimes you have a really long description with it, and sometimes you have just 2 words, but having this vision and being the person that I am, it's fun for me. Yeah. So I would say Instagram.
I love it. Well, Jose, thanks for letting us get to know you more and just giving us insights on how to either get our career restarted or started through LinkedIn. Where can everyone find you?
Yes. So I have a website. My website is called Coaching with Jose Miguel. So my first name is Jose Miguel. So just add the coaching to it. I'm on all the platforms: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Snapchat. What else did I miss? Twitter. And on all of those handles, believe it or not, if you search for Jose Miguel Longo, you will find me. There's very few of me. So it's super easy to find. So.
Awesome. And so with your website, that's where people can go to get coaching with LinkedIn and resume and just getting some career clarity. Is that right?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I pride myself in being a career coach and a life coach, and I've spent over a decade working with people doing it. So if you're interested in doing a quick 30-minute call to figure out if my coaching is great for you, I'd be happy to set that up with anybody, and they can go ahead and send an email to hello@coachingwithjosemiguel.com and go right through the website.
Thank you for spending some time with us on the podcast today. I hope you found something of value in today's episode. Don't forget to reach out to Jose for help optimizing your LinkedIn profile so you can get hired, recruited for your next position. Till next time, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss the next episode.